Well, hi everybody. First of all, I sent details of this picture to Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department and said you're good with frames. Trouble is, they sent me this, and that's for a 10 by 8. It don't fit. It don't fit. So I checked it. I got my Ericoze Richard McAdam tape measure, and I checked it to see if the frame would fit, and it just don't fit. That's 14 inches that way. Let's bring that across a bit. 14 inches that way, and it's 11 that way, and yet your frame is for a 10 by 8 with the mount, or 12 by 10 without the mount. Sorry guys, it just doesn't fit. I've checked it. I've checked it with my Richard McAdam tape measure. It just doesn't. It don't work. So back to square one with the framing. When we were in Australia with Stacey and the Hod and the Dude, we went to 2 shows, and it was kind of glaringly obvious that neither Stephen Avery nor Kathleen Zellner were getting any mention at all by Steve Drizzen and Laura Nyrider. They just, it was as if, we're here to discuss Making a Murderer and The Staircase, but we had no mention at all of Stephen Avery. We had at Sydney, we had one mention of Kathleen Zellner, and that was actually David Rudolph that mentioned Kathleen Zellner, not in connection with Making a Murderer. And then at Melbourne, I think Steve's name got mentioned, I think it was half a dozen times, but no mention of Kathleen Zellner. And it always struck me as kind of odd, and it always reminded me, believe it or not, of a guilter a long time back, Thomas Hens, who pointed out that he was of the opinion that Steve Drizzen and Laura Nyrider thought that Steve was guilty, because, as he said, they never ever mentioned Stephen Avery or Kathleen Zellner, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think there are other reasons for that. I've always been of the opinion, though, that for Brendan, the decision in 2016 by William Duffin would not, I don't think it would have been contested by Brad Schimmel and the state had it not been for Making a Murderer being released at the beginning of the year. I'm sure that the state would have quite happily said, to Brendan, on you go. We're not worried about you. But of course, the attention that Making a Murderer shone a spotlight on Wisconsin and Manitowoc in particular. That writ of habeas corpus that was described as a legal miracle in series 2 of Making a Murderer. I think it would have been. I think it would not have been fought. As Earl Avery says, why are they fighting this? They've got nothing on Brendan. It's it's just a whole pack of nonsense, as we all know, as we've all accepted. And bizarrely, we've got that quote from Seth Waxman where he says, there isn't a single judge that thinks that Brendan had anything to do with the demise of Stephen Avery, the demise of Teresa Halbach. A lot to do with the demise of Stephen Avery, but not through really his fault. And the the thing is that, as I say, what Steve Drizzen and Laura Nyrider tried to do was, basically the impossible, which was to be granted this writ of habeas corpus and to have that accepted all the way through the system, every appeal. As we know, they tried everything. They moved mountains to try and prove that Brendan was innocent, based purely on the science of false confessions. That everybody accepts that there is a science to this, of false confessions. Of course, on the other hand, we've got Kathleen Zellner, who is incredibly successful and is incredibly successful in exonerating people by simply showing the court who the real perpetrator is. And that's huge, because had Steve and Laura had the opportunity to say, not only was Brendan's confession coerced, but we now know who the real perpetrator or perpetrators are, that would have gone heavily in Brendan's favor. And so to a certain extent, you wonder why they didn't choose to look at the alternative suspects in all of this. They kept going on with this, the science of false confessions. And I think there is a very, very, very simple reason for that. As I say, Kathleen Zellner, she likes to prove who the real killer is, or who the real killers are. Bobby Dassey has always been under huge, huge suspicion. And in that phone call that we hear, the rather angry phone call that we hear in Making a Murderer, we have it confirmed that as far as Bobby was concerned, it couldn't have been Steve, because he saw Teresa leave and told Blaine that. And this is all confirmed in this phone call, which makes me think that, I don't think, obviously Bobby doesn't at that time understand what the whole purpose of Teresa's disappearance is, and yet a few days later, we find out that he's helping plant the RAV4 through our new witness that's come forward. But of course, at the trial, the star witness for the state, and this is what Kathleen Zellner keeps stressing, the state's star witness is Bobby Dassey, who has completely committed perjury by not mentioning the fact that he, had initially said, yeah, I saw Teresa leave. It couldn't have been Steve because I saw her leave, failing to mention the fact that, Bobby, you were following her out of the salvage yard. So clear perjury in that respect. And you wonder if them discovering, as in detectives discovering the contents of the computer, if that was used as one of many pressures as leverage to get Bobby to be this state's star witness. So as I say, how do you find out who the real killer is? As I say, the courts, in order to help Brendan, the courts aren't interested in any of this science of false confessions. And sadly for Bob, we hear in that phone call, and I think, from what I can tell, quite a lot of people developed a certain level of animosity towards Bob when she complains to Steve about the actions and the investigation of Kathleen Zellner, and complains that, Bobby, he's got a wife and family. And so a lot of people, I think slightly unfairly, misconstrued that as being, that she only cares about Bobby and his wife and family. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case. I think that, we're beginning to realize the problem that Stephen Drizzen and Laura Nyrider have in all of this. How do you defend and how do you try and get Brendan Dassey out of prison when, if you're not able to do it by proving that the confession was false, even though everybody knows it's false, all the judges they all realize it's a false confession. It's just rubbish. It's nonsense. But how do you then get Brendan out other than, showing who the real killer is? Their big problem, of course, is that in order to do that, they're going to have to expose the misdemeanors, whatever they are, of Bobby. They're going to have to show the misdemeanors of Scott, and also if there's any attempt at covering up, there doesn't seem to be by Barb. The fact that she handed over the computer to Kathleen Zellner with the Deedring say to her, don't hand that over to Kathleen Zellner, best to get rid of it. As I say, I think a lot of people picked up on that. Bobby's got a wife and family that he needs to think about, and they misconstrued that as if, well, that's double standards. That's like caring for Bobby, but you have no care for Brendan, because what about his wife and family that he never got, that he hasn't got yet? What about his freedom that he hasn't got yet? And I think that's a little bit unfair. And I don't think that's what Barb meant. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's not what Barb meant by that outburst. It was just concern for Bobby. As I say, we've got this other man helping, this older man helping to push the RAV. Who is the perpetrator and who is the accomplice in this? Who is helping? Clearly, this is Bobby helping for whatever reason we don't know. But as I say, I get the sense through all of Kathleen Zellner's motions that she's talking about this, the star witness, and how if you remove this star witness, his credibility, because of his involvement with A, planting the vehicle, and B, perjury on the stand, Stephen would almost certainly not have been convicted. Although you never know, because of course, you've got people on the jury who shouldn't have been there. Let's put it that way. But as I say, for me, the problem is that Barb has always denied any involvement by Bobby and Scott. She's always tried to defend them, saying, I would know if they've done anything. Clearly, she doesn't know. She doesn't know half of it. Oops, I would suggest that she doesn't know. She didn't really know what was going on. She had a lot on her mind at that time. I think she was just dating Scott Taddick at the time. Ultimately, of course, Bobby is the star witness. Because of him, Kathleen Zellner saying, yeah, that's why Steve was found guilty. So because Steve was found guilty, Brendan stood no chance. I mean, he didn't really stand a chance anyway, following the March 1st interrogation and the press conference. Oh, he's sweaty. Is it supposed to be Barb that tells Brendan, sit down, son, I've got something to tell you. Your older brother and your stepdad, they both lied in court in order to convict Steve. That helped convict you. We now know that your older brother helped with the planting of evidence to convict Steve, which ultimately helped to convict you. Is that a job for Barb to do? Is that a job that Barb needs to say to, Brendan, you need to sit down, son, listen to this. This is, this is tragic news for you. I appreciate that, but I need to tell you this. Or is it the job of Steve Drizzen and Laura Nyrider? Because they are Brendan's attorneys. Is it their job? As I say, I think they are in a very, both Barb and Steve Drizzen and Laura Nyrider, they're in an incredibly difficult situation. It'll be interesting to chat with other lawyers who have had something similar, where one family member has caused the wrongful conviction of another. In fact, just at the top of the head, I'm reminded that in Jerry Buting's book, Illusion of Justice, he talks about this Ralph Armstrong case where it was the other brother that was the perpetrator of the crime. And, I remember saying to Eric Cozy, I've not got an older brother or a younger brother. I often used to wind him up by saying that he was my wee brother, my younger brother, but I find it incredible that one brother would cause so much damage to another. I find it incredible that Bobby would do anything of this in order to convict Steve. In fact, I can't help thinking, Steve basically lost his family in 85, wife and kids, for 18 years. And some of them are not, are not with him anymore in any sense whatsoever. Some are, but from what I can gather, living next door to Barb, Steve was sometimes the guy that would persuade Brendan to do stuff. It was like, handy having his brother there. You can tell that Steve really loves his parents. He loves his brothers and sisters, and he loves their kids. And I can't help thinking that, given however millions he would have received, we know he was going to buy Xander Road for himself and, Jody to live in. And we know that he was thinking of buying a property for Marie Avery, who isn't actually even an Avery. You wonder how much his generosity would have extended to Brendan, who we hear that he was talking about getting a car for him, going out and sorting out what car so that he could start driving, and I'm sure everybody at the salvage yard would have benefited, because Steve Avery, from all accounts, is a very giving, generous person, fun-loving, just wants to have a good time. So ultimately, is it up to Barb to sit Brendan down and tell him? Is it up to Stephen Drizzer and Laura Nyrider? I would say, in defense of Brad Dassey, that's what he's trying to do at the moment. He's trying to, raise the awareness of Brendan to the fact that, you're going to have to come to terms with this. The reason you're where you are is because your brother has been involved in the planting of evidence against Steve, perjured himself. Your stepfather perjured himself. This bonfire grew from 3 foot to like as tall as the garage, 10 foot tall. Yes, Bob, we know about the pressure that they put you under, and we can hear your pain and anguish in that phone call. And that's why you're saying about, Bobby, he's got his wife and family, everything is just falling apart. And it's, as I say, I don't think it's your job to sit down with Brendan. Possibly it's Steve Drizzen and Laura Nyrider. Brad's trying to do his bit. Okay, I appreciate that, when you start calling people names and start swearing a lot, it kind of undervalues their argument. Their opinion is being undervalued, and which is unfortunate, because I think Brad's intentions are simply that he wants to do whatever he can to see Brendan Dassey released. I'm absolutely sure of that. Ultimately, the buck stops here. If we want to see Brendan Dassey released, yourself, Barb, Scott Taddick, and Bobby need to sit down with Kathleen Zellner and tell Kathleen and her investigators everything that you know about this case, in order to help Brendan, to help Steve, but ultimately to help Brendan. And that conversation, between Brendan and Bobby, as to what the hell he was playing at, again, it seems to me there's mitigating circumstances here. He's got this porn on the computer, so therefore the police used it to pressurize him. We hear all about the pressures that are being put on, Barb and her family. The fact that Bobby, though, at the beginning tells Blaine, it couldn't have been Steve. I saw her leave. That story dramatically changed. We just need to know why. As Mark Hodden had pointed out to me, this Sawinski fella, this is one brick being removed from a wall, and the whole wall could topple down. Bobby, Scott, Bob, you just need to come clean with Kathleen Zellner. Take the path of least resistance. There's an easy way of doing this, and there's a very, very painful, drawn out, excruciating way of eventually seeing both Steve and Brendan released. I admit, I'm sat 4,000 miles away. It's easy for me to say this. It's easy for me to sit back and, from a distance to say this. I'm not in your situation. I don't know. I don't know all the complexities. I don't know all the pressures that involved there. But looking from it from outside, for me, that's the way forward in this. Is come clean with Kathleen Zellner. Otherwise, it's just going to. We always thought it was going to be a bit of a painful experience. Since Making a Murder 1 and 2 came out, there was always going to be a roller coaster ride with all the ups and downs. Anyway, I better crack on because I'm hopefully going to have a chat with the HOD soon, and we're going to record a couple of videos for next weekend. So I'll catch you all later. As I say, if you're looking for a frame, don't bother with MTSO. It don't fit. They're bloody useless. Bye for now.